As the old saying goes, patience is a stuff it, I can't be bothered to read the rest of that sentence. And that's why I would be a terrible Money in the Bank holder, as that gimmick is all about biding your time and waiting for the best moment to use it. Hey, just ask any of these lots who all waited for well over 100 days before making good on their briefcase win. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 Money in the Bank holders who waited the longest to cash in. Join us! Number 10, The Miz, 119 days. We will get to Otis's time with the Money in the Bank a bit later on, but without spoiling too much, it was disastrous. He might have gotten super over off the back of his storyline with Mandy Rose, but he definitely wasn't at the stage where he should have been a world champion. WWE realized this eventually and tried to come up with a clever way of getting the briefcase off him. They then gave up on those ideas and just gave it to The Miz instead. C'est la vie. Miz challenged the contract holder at Hell in a Cell 2020, aiming to use his partner John Morrison to his advantage. In a shocking turn of events, it would actually be Otis's second that won in the match, as Tucker turned on his buddy to cost him the bout. Tucker, of course, would go on to do nothing of note before getting released the following year. Great work, guys. Miz held his new toy for 119 days before successfully cashing in on Drew McIntyre at Elimination Chamber 2021. However, as part of a deal struck with the Hurt Business, Miz then lost the title in a match against Bobby Lashley just 8 days later. Number 9, The Miz, 127 days. Well, would you look at that? A decade before he beat Otis to hold the briefcase for a second time, Miz won his first Money in the Bank contract in the traditional manner. He won the first ever Raw exclusive ladder match at the 2010 pay-per-view, whilst also holding the United States Championship at the same time. Miz lost that belt at Night of Champions in September, but would move on to much bigger things just 2 months after that. On the November 22nd, 2010 episode of Raw, the A-lister took advantage of Randy Orton having just defended the WWE title against Wade Barrett to cash in on the Viper. He blocked an RKO and delivered a thunderous skull-crushing finale to capture the title to the anger of little girls everywhere. Well, that particularly angry little girl anyway. The new champion had held this briefcase for 127 days, 8 days longer than he would hold it in 10 years' time. His subsequent title reign lasted much longer than his one in 2012, as he ruled over Raw for 160 days. He even got to headline WrestleMania. Not sure if you knew that about The Miz. He never mentions it. Number 8, Austin Theory, 129 days. When Austin Theory won the 2022 Men's Money in the Bank match, it sparked frenzied debate over what WWE were going to do next, since both the titles were being held by the juggernaut that is Roman Reigns. Were they going to have Theory cash in and fail, lose the briefcase to someone else, let it expire? Notice how I didn't say have him beat Roman Reigns, because everyone knew that that was never going to happen. Fans would have to wait 129 days for their answer, as that's how long it took Mr. A-Town down to pull the trigger. He tried multiple times to cash in ahead of time, most memorably at Clash at the Castle, where WWE flew him all the way out to Wales just to get clobbered by Tyson Fury. In the end, Theory made the baffling decision to try and cash in on Seth Rollins, who was the United States champion. To paraphrase Bart Simpson, I don't think any of us expected him to do that. This was the first time a non-world title had been the target of the contract holder, and guess what? Austin lost. You love it. Number 7, Daniel Bryan, 154 days. You could argue that Daniel Bryan in 2011 was the perfect example of a Mr. Money in the Bank. He was young and talented, but WWE were probably never going to naturally push him to the top of the card. Money in the Bank gave him a great way to win his first world title in a manner befitting how the company saw him. Small. They saw him as small. Bryan won the SmackDown briefcase at the 2011 pay-per-view and would hold on to it for 154 days. He would have still been at number 7 on this list had his first cash-in on SmackDown gone as planned. D-Bry thought he had successfully taken the World Heavyweight Championship from Mark Henry after 132 days with the case, but this was overturned as Henry wasn't medically cleared to compete. Not to worry, as the American Dragon would then successfully cash in on Big Show just a month or so later at the TLC pay-per-view. He would hold the big gold belt until WrestleMania 28, where he lost it in... oh dear, it's this match, isn't it? Better not talk about it for too long. Let's just move on to the person who beat him. Number 6, Sheamus, 161 days. 4 years after taking on Bryan in the match that shall not be named, Sheamus was once again in the world title picture. This was during his Mohawk phase that we all go through in our late 30s, am I right, lads? He was also a heel, having returned from injury the night after WrestleMania 31 to blast Dolph Ziggler square in the mush. This led to their Kiss Me Ass match at Extreme Rules. Remember that? Rubbish, wasn't it? Sheamus would pick up the Money in the Bank briefcase later that year, becoming only the second man in history to win that match, as well as the Royal Rumble and King of the Ring. 161 days went by, mostly without incident. He attempted to cash in on Seth Rollins at Night of Champions, but was halted by Kane. And then came Survivor Series and the finals of a tournament to crown a new WWE champion. After a hard-fought match against Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns finally reached the mountaintop to win the very first World Championship of his WWE career, only for Sheamus to cash in about 5 minutes later. You love it. Number 5, Otis, 193 days. See? Told you we'd get here. The 2020 edition of Money in the Bank was very unusual, as 2020 was the year somebody opened the gates of hell, Pandora's box, and my underwear drawer all at once. The traditional ladder match was replaced by a cinematic encounter located within WWE's corporate headquarters. It was fun for the most part, if you take out that bit where Dana Brooke grabbed the wrong briefcase and looked like a total dingus. The women's match was won by Asuka, who actually won the Raw Women's Championship from a pregnant Becky Lynch. As for the men's, that was won by our boy from Heavy Machinery. As we've already discussed, Otis winning Money in the Bank was a pretty odd choice. There was no way he was going to be beating either Drew McIntyre or Roman Reigns, and it quickly became apparent that the prop was now a bit of dead weight for the lad. The big man's 193 days with the case made him the person who held Money in the Bank for the longest time without ever cashing it in. Poor Otis, he just wanted to do the worm. Number 4, Dolph Ziggler, 267 days. Taking a massive leap now, the next 4 contract holders all waited for well over 200 days to cash in. Dolph Ziggler won the World Heavyweight Championship briefcase in 2012 and held his prize for the remainder of the calendar year. In that time, he put it on the line not once, but twice. He beat Chris Jericho one night after SummerSlam in a match where, if Y2J lost, he would be terminated from WWE. Then at TLC, Ziggler main evented the show in a ladder match for the contract against John Cena. Ziggles defeated Big Match John to keep his grubby little mitts on the case. All of this built to the night after WrestleMania 29 and one of the loudest pops of the modern era. When Ziggler's music hit whilst Alberto Del Rio was lying injured in the ring, the crowd simply lost their minds. The show-off had gotten pretty damn over during his run as Mr. Money in the Bank, and all that hard work was about to pay off. The cash-in was successful and the show-off ended the night as the new World Heavyweight Champion. Number 3, Seth Rollins, 273 days. After splitting up the Shield in chair-swinging fashion, Seth Rollins fell right into the pocket of the Authority. With a little, or a lot, of their help, he was able to snatch Money in the Bank in 2014 and begin one epic run with the briefcase. Going into WrestleMania 31, WWE had booked themselves into a hell of a corner. WWE Champion Brock Lesnar was set to face off against Roman Reigns in the main event. Lesnar had been a part-time champ since winning the belt at SummerSlam, and fans were sick of him only turning up once every few months. That said, they were sick of Roman even more. Just when it looked like all was lost, WWE implemented one of their greatest ever booking decisions and had Rollins cash in during the Mania main event. This was the first time this had ever happened, as well as the first cash-in to go down at the Show of Shows. After 273 days of hanging on to the case, Rollins successfully pinned Reigns to pull off the heist of the century. Seriously, props, and thank God they didn't take the contract off him sooner. Number 2, Edge, 280 days. The first man to win Money in the Bank was also the one who held on to it for the longest. At At WrestleMania 21, Edge walked out of the inaugural ladder match with his hands clasped firmly around the briefcase. Little did we know that we would be seeing him with his new accessory for the next 9 and a bit months. For the next 280 days, the Rated R superstar quietly watched and waited for the perfect chance to strike. He was forced to defend his briefcase against Matt Hardy in October of 2005 before eventually choosing his moment at New Year's Revolution 2006. After an explanation by Mr. McMahon, because frankly nobody knew how this thing worked yet, Edge took on a bloodied and beaten John Cena, fresh off defending his title inside Elimination Chamber in the first ever cash-in match. Edge eventually put Cena down for the count, earning him his first of 11 World Championships across a glittering WWE career. This cash-in was pivotal to Edge's ascension to the main event and to the development of his ultimate opportunist character. Number 1. Carmella 287 Days. Edge might be the first male performer to have held onto the briefcase for the longest, but when it comes to the ladies, the answer is Fabul. Is it another L or fabulous? She's fabulous. What I'm trying to say is that in 2017, Carmella became the first woman to win Money in the Bank. She was also the first woman to have the briefcase taken off her because somebody thought it'd be a good idea for James Ellsworth to get involved. Because WWE loves nothing more than to waste our time, they had Carmella win the briefcase back about a week later on SmackDown. And thus began the longest ever gap between a briefcase win and a cash-in. After a few failed attempts to bring home the SmackDown Women's Championship, the Princess of Staten Island finally scored big when Charlotte Flair was left laying by the Iconics. Thanks to Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, Carmella cashed in to win her first and thus far only Women's Championship in WWE. And to think, her time with the briefcase would have been even longer if a certain man with 2 hands hadn't gotten involved. Why must you ruin everything, you chinless knobend?